So hey guys, we're back with a new Baldur skate video, and today we are going to talk about the Valour and the equipments I use and the race I choose. So we're gonna start by introducing what the Valour actually do. So at level 3 you gain medium armor, you gain shields and martial weapons. So this is already very useful because martial weapons usually gives you the best items in the game, and to my opinion, hand crossbow is just not as good as longbows, especially for a Valour. So you also get combat inspiration. So that means you get upgrades to your abilities. So combat inspiration actually is very powerful. It allows you to get an improvement in AC, attack roll, saving throw, ability checks, etc. And the key points here is saving throw, attack roll, and AC. So for AC, it's always useful. For the attack roll, you can help your allies to land more accurately with sharpshooter, and with saving throw, you can save your allies from potential danger. Remember that this is an inspiration still, so you cannot use this on yourself. You can only use this on your allies, but it is still very powerful and a substantial improvement. So for level 6, you get extra attack. That means that you have more weapon attack available, and you can get 2 attacks. So that is the features you get. Now let's move on to the build. So for a Valour Bard, I recommend going all the way to level 12, no need to multi-class. And you can see here the stat distribution I have. Basically, I'm going all in for dexterity because you are going to use your weapon most of the time. And you can notice that there is no constitution here because I have an item that will buff up my constitution anyway, which means that I have more leverage to go for wisdom, and I have a 16 in charisma, so I have a good way to do face and talking. So for my abilities here, not much special, but I do get the athlete feat at level 4, which helps me a lot with solving prone and increasing my movement speed. At level 8, I get sharpshooter, which increase my damage potential, especially with my weapon. And you can see here I also have the tiefling background, which means I have resistance to fire damage. Now the reason I choose a tiefling is because of the cantrip thaumaturgy. So thaumaturgy gives me advantage on intimidation and performance checks, and this is better than friends by all means because friends will aggro your enemies in auto mode, while thaumaturgy is basically a free advantage. And combining with my proficiency and my expertise in my phase skills, it is going to be effective most of the time. So for a tiefling, you also get the Searing Smite ability at level 3, and you get the Branding Smite at level 5. So these are also very good in increasing your melee damage, but I'm not going to focus on melee most of the time. I think it's fine to focus on melee, but you are going to use medium armor, so it's gonna just be okay. You can focus on anything you want. The strength of a Valour is that you are very versatile. You can do pretty much anything, and I believe it is going to be a very well-rounded character. So let's move on to the gear, which is the part that you guys are interested about. So I'm going to start with the helmet. So helmets, I'm going to go for the helmet of Arcane Equity, and I believe you have already heard of this before. It's very famous. Whenever you deal damage with a weapon attack, you gain Arcane Equity for 2 turns. So that means Arcane Equity will increase your control ability. You can read here that you can increase your DC for 2 turns, and this is very valuable. So we can see where you can get this gear. So you can take this in the Manson's Guild basement. So this is the coordinates, and this is where you can get it. Basically, you can get this at Act 2, so it's not too far away. You can get this fairly early. So gonna equip that. So moving on, we get Cloak of Protection. So for the cloaks, I have a lot of options, but I think you don't really need to make it too complicated. The Cloak of Protection can be obtained in Last Lights In, which is also in Act 2. So you get to increase your armor class and your saving throw, which is pretty powerful. So let's move on to the armor. So for the armor, you get to use the Armor of Agility. So this is a very, very powerful medium armor. You can add your full dexterity modifier to your armor class, as you can read here. Excuse me. So you also doesn't have disadvantage on stealth ability checks, and you can increase your saving throw. So this is definitely the most powerful armor you can get for this build. So reading here, you can get this in the Storm Shore Armory in this coordinate. So this is going to be obtainable at Act 3, which is pretty late, but today I want to focus on the best gear and the gear that I use all the time. So this is the goal you are reaching in Act 3. You can get this armor. Otherwise, just take anything. So moving on to the gloves. So for the gloves, you get the Wondrous gloves. I know there are a lot of competitors here, but I'm a pretty simple guy. I just like to increase my armor class and more resource. So here, after equipping, you can see that you have increased your armor class by 1, and when you have Baldur Inspiration, you can get 1 more use. So the Baldur Inspiration die will increase here to 6, which is very useful because your main way to support your allies is going to be the Baldur Inspiration. So this is very powerful and very useful. So next up is the boots. So the evasive shoes, again, not a very powerful item, but it is fairly useful to increase your acrobatic skill and your armor class. So you get 25 AC here. So looking back to where you can get these items, for the Wondrous Gloves, you can get it at Grimforge. So this is pretty early in Act 1, and you can get this here, the coordinates. Now for the evasive shoes, you also can get it in Last Lights In. So Madis will sell these boots, and it's not too difficult to find. So again, a fairly early item to obtain. Now here for the amulet. This is going to be the best amulet for a lot of builds. Basically, you get the amulet of greater health, which increase your constitution to 23, and there's an advantage on your constitution saving throw checks. So you can get this in Act 3 in the House of Hope. Basically, when you're retrieving the Orphic Hammer, and you can find Raphael, and this is the coordinates. So this is a very, very powerful item, but it's not going to be easily obtainable. So before that, don't dump your constitution. Wait until Act 3 and you can do it. Now for the rings, which is another important aspect for this build. You get to use the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. So after hitting a creature with a weapon attack, you can cast illusion or enchantment spells as a bonus action. So this is really, really good when used with the Helmet of Arcane Equity. And the reason is that after you do a weapon damage, you can go for a spell. So remember that you are a full spell caster. So let's take a look what kind of spells you can expect to use. Level 1, you can go for Tasha Hideous Laughter. Level 2, you can go for Whole Person, and these are the standard spells you're gonna go for. And I'm gonna move forward to Hold Monster here. So this is another powerful spell that you will use all the time. When you hit an enemy and use this spell, you're gonna have a very high chance to land your attack. Now for level 6, you can use Otto's Irresistible Dance, but you can also go for the Upcast Conjure Elemental, which is going to be very powerful as well. So for your stable, if you don't want to burn your resource, you can just go for Vicious Mockery, and it's going to debuff your enemies and get disadvantage on attacks. So this is a very important item. Where you can get it? You can get this here. So in the jungle, looted from a backpack. So jungle again is in the Act 3, if I remember correctly, after you fight with the genie and the genie sends you away. But it is a very powerful item and it is worth the adventure. So after that, you can go for any ring here you want. Personally, I will go for the Caustic Band just to increase your weapon attacks. And for your weapons here, your melee and ranged weapons. So for melee, I decided to go for the Rhapsody weapon. And before that, let's look at where you can get the Caustic brand. So for some reason, it is branded as uncommon here, but very rare in the game. I don't know why, but it's because of the honorable. Okay, yeah. So you can get this here. So this is in the Underdark, which means you can get this fairly early. So it is a very powerful weapon, very powerful item. So for your melee weapon, you can go for Rhapsody. The reason being that for every attack you make, you will increase your spell save DC. And for this build, you're all about balancing your martial power and your control ability as a full caster. So this is a very powerful item. We can get this here. In Cazador's dungeon, which is again Act 3, which is fairly late, but this is a very powerful weapon and really good late game. So for the shield, so this is one of the reasons why the Valour Bard is not as bad as people say comparing to stuff like Source Bard, because you get to use items the other two cannot use. So for example, for the shield proficiency, you can get Coverage Shield. So this is good for my build because I usually go for stuff that increase the spell save DC and spell attack rolls. And this exactly do the job. And you can see it's crazy. You get 27 AC, which is really high. Now, where you can get this? You can get this in the Mind Flayer colony, carried by Catherick Thorn when thought a second time. So again, in Act 2, and as the name implies, you can get it here from the antagonist. Now finally, for the ranged weapon, since you are not a Source Bard, and now you have proficiency in martial weapons, you have the option to use probably the strongest weapon in the game, which is going to be this one. I'm not going to pronounce the name. I don't know how to pronounce it. Like Gontur Mao, something like this. So anyway, you get to have a chance to inflict guiding bolts on your target, and you will shine your weapon. And you also have Celestial Haste, which is pretty much a better version of Haste. More turns and more reliable, doesn't get you into a bad condition. So this is very good. Of course, you also get some weapon type to frighten your enemies potentially. So you can get this again very late in the game. So here you can see that you can get this in Steel Watch Foundry. So again, Act 3. So with this build, you are pretty much going to be a one-man army. And remember that your build is pretty much the jack of all trades within the Bard subclasses, which means that you are good at support, you are good at control, you are good at your weapon damages, especially with Sharpshooter, and you are going to be a very powerful and well-rounded character. You are not going to reach the peaks. For example, the lower bar is going to be greatest at control, arguably. And the Source Bar is going to be the greatest in attacks, especially after multi-classing with the Paladin. But for the Valour Bar, it has always been the power to be all-rounded and to be great anywhere. And you can see here, 27 AC, a lot of hit points. Not a lot, but it's good enough. And I just think this is a very solid build. Try it out. Try with your friends. Try by yourself. See whether the build suits you. And I hope that today you have some understanding to the Valour Bard, and my build can help you understand your character more. So enjoy the game, and I'll see you next time.